Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews. If you enjoy this review, make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button, and if you have any opinions at all that you would like to share, make sure to leave them down in the comment section. Infinite and Divine, Silver Lining. Infinite and Divine are a Swedish hard rock and metal duo, yet again another band from our good friends over at Frontiers Records. These guys just keep on bringing some wonderful, nostalgic, prime, fantastic material reminiscent of the glory days of this kind of metal, the early to mid 80s. And this duo here is an extremely new addition to the Frontiers roster. Just released their debut single in early February, with this debut album here just being released in the beginning of this month, April. This is also technically a request, but since it is such a new album, I figured I'd incorporate it into an official album review since I have seen this while perusing Instagram. And also since my new album queue is pretty empty for the most part. So, what are my thoughts on Silver Lining? Let's find out as I review it track by track. We will start with the singles, with there being two of them. The first being the eponymous track Infinite and Divine, which immediately comes out guns blazing with an excellent guitar riff, incorporating some shrillness in there too, along with these mighty drums. Vocalist Tessa has an outstanding voice for the genre. She has the roughness, the rasp, and also the intensity to sell this genre. So why is she mixed so far into the back? Don't get me wrong, she's still there. It's not like it's too difficult to hear her, but she's certainly playing second fiddle to this instrumental, which is a major sin. Lyrically, it's an obligatory love tune about this person being so dear to them, wanting to live a future with them. It's fairly basic and with some poor mixing, but the instrumentation is just so immaculate that it kind of balances it out pretty well. And the second and final single, the album opener I Feel Alive, certainly lives up to this title. It really feels alive and proclaims that out of the gate with another amazing riff, but more notably these grand, piercing, in-your-face keyboard synths. It definitely adds a punch. Then Tessa comes in and, my god, why is she so low in the mix? That voice deserves to be right up front and center, commanding the charge, and unfortunately, it is a little bit more difficult to hear her this time around, purely due to the grandiosity of this instrumental, which is so unfortunate, as this could no doubt be masterful if the mixing was just tweaked that extra bit to push those vocals up. Lyrically, it's about this strange feeling you get when you're with someone, but boiling it down to this rejuvenating sense of humanity. Yet again, instrumental is great, but production just holds this back. Now for the rest of the tracks. Keep Moving On presents the most heavy instrumentals so far on the record, particularly in the tougher riff that is much more prominent here, alongside even more keyboards, but dialed back. The main thing about this song, though, is that Tessa's vocals are mixed much more appropriately. Although I don't think they're perfect here, it's still a great improvement from the singles. She has such a presiding vocal tone, and it is utilized much better here. Also, phenomenal solo work from guitarist Jan here, absolutely well done. Lyrically, it's mostly a motivational cut about even though your feet may be tired and how much time it's all taking, you've always got to remember to keep moving on. Finally, a good track here, one I can absolutely recommend to you. Check this one out. Not Too Late is the first track here that doesn't come out swinging immediately, instead building up with a pretty sharp riff that blossoms with a maniacal synth melody and even more heavy drums. I really get a boss music vibe out of this one, like some final boss to an epic RPG, and I'm kind of a sucker for that type of instrumental. Another big difference here is that this one doesn't have as much energy or an exhilarating drive as the previous songs. It still definitely has a punch, but it's more relaxed with the slower tempo. Tessa's voice, yet again, marvelous, especially for that final chorus where she soars. And the verses here work so well since the density of the instrumental is reduced just enough to make her pop out a little bit more. Lyrically, it's about comforting this partner and making sure they're okay through all their dark thoughts. Again, a pretty good song. Wasteland is another pretty solid banger on here, although certainly not anywhere near as memorable as some of the other tracks here. A lot of it is just filtered out, particularly in the instrumentation. The synths aren't as fulfilling, the guitar riff is mostly drowned out by the still impactful percussion, which doesn't give it as much time in the spotlight as I'd prefer. However, Tessa really does shine here, and by that I mean the mixing isn't as horrific. For the first time on this record, she stands in front of the instrumental, at least for the verses, and honestly, it just feels so liberating. Factor in a pretty decent guitar solo and these lyrics about actually being free from these metaphorical shackles, possibly another relationship, but regardless, it's pretty alright. Burn No More instantly grabs my attention with the skipping percussion track. It's a nice change up from the mostly basic rhythms of the tracks prior. Aside from that though, the riffs are still good, again the synths stick to the background and Tez's vocals are still alright, but the track as a whole just doesn't really connect with me as the others did. There's very minimal impact here, the pairing of Tez's mostly deeper delivery, and the admittedly standard instrumentation aside from the drums of course, it just didn't really grab me. And I feel like it's trying to be a bit more of an eerie, ominous with the singing, but the beat doesn't portray that feeling, so it just clashes in kind of an ugly way. Lyrically, it's another one of these tracks where you're taking control, not going to be silent or held hostage anymore, time to rise like a phoenix, which is yet another clashing element to the already conflicting song. Meh, not for me. Pass. We Are One, the longest track on this record, just barely missing out on 6 minutes, and this is just such a filler track in its purest form. It does start out uniquely enough, though, with these heroic, empowering synths that sound like a war march, along with the percussion in the back, and then when it all comes in, the synths get pushed way into the background, replaced by a swampy, chugging guitar that just kind of globs together with the rest of the instrumental. Tez's vocals are easily the best part of the song here. They certainly draw your attention, especially on the chorus, and there's also this weird segment around 3/4 of the way through, turning into this motivational speech where the instrumental pulls back, and there's vocal harmonies in the background. It doesn't really add anything to the track in my opinion. Yeah, this one's not too good. Pass. Off the End of the World picks the album back up a little bit here with a more passionate, heartfelt love song which is even displayed in the instrumental. The guitar here doesn't have as much power, letting the synths take most of the spotlight alongside a very punchy drum. Tez's vocals also tone back a little bit, but instead of being submerged behind the instrumentation like you'd expect, she sounds good here, opting for a more gentle, serene, and heartwarming delivery, sounding like a slightly more dynamic power ballad as these lyrics portray this failed relationship to her surprise, culminating with her begging this partner to take her back, even just as friends. Not a bad song here. You and I is a pretty alright track. It's not amazing, but I also wouldn't call it filler. It's just kind of average, although it does certainly surprise at opening moments with a much more pop-centric vocal melody, a direct clash to the rough guitar and especially the exuberant punch of the drum. It's one of the more powerful drum tracks on the record, although I do get kind of a Moonlight Haze vibe from the divergence of the instrumental and the vocals. But my biggest gripe with this track is that the chorus is so flaccid and weak. There's zero punch there, and the only climax to be heard is Tez's vocals leaning slightly more towards rock tropes. Lyrically, I mean, the title does kind of say it all. It's alright, I'm just very indifferent towards this one. While You're Looking for Love is a pretty decent track. I quite enjoy this one. There's a lot of synth work here, usually on the choruses, which does give that much needed punch, but Tez's vocals come back to their more aggressive roots here. Although during the more energetic parts of the track, she does kind of start to fall yet again back into the background, which is kind of a shame, especially with these positive lyrics about everybody needing love, but once you actually go out and search for it yourself and try to find your preference and how it may not end up working out, it's heartbreaking. Couple that with a pretty good guitar solo as well, and it's a song worth keeping around in my opinion. And finally, the closer, Perplexed Perfection, closes off the album on a positive note. I quite enjoyed this one. It has an exhilarating roughness to it, which is most notably displayed with Tez's way more traditional metal voice, giving her that commanding presence here again. Not to mention the guitar and synth work being pretty solid as well, but a lot more of that chugging guitar that I love to hear. Not to mention a nice guitar solo as well. Lyrically, it is a little bit vague, but what I can personally muster is that it's about some toxic generation who lives life by hiding their flaws and insecurities, smiling through the pain. Regardless of that, still a good closer. Overall, this one was a little bit of a mixed bag in my opinion. Certainly not my favorite out of the Frontier scene at all that I have covered on this channel, but as a whole, I did come away from this with some pretty kick-ass metal tracks, plus some punchy choruses and soaring solos as you'd expect from albums like this. But what really holds us back from joining the A-League is a lot of the weird mixing and production choices made here. Certainly doesn't sell the band all that well here, but regardless, I still had a mostly positive experience with this album. I'm feeling about a 6 out of 10 on this record. Well guys, hope you enjoyed that review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.